a lot of victims groups for women who have been in horribly abusive situations. Oh my God, all of those groups are the same. They're just... Anyways,
now we're both
I was
here.
saying that kombucha kind of fucked me up.
Why?
It like hurt my stomach a little bit. It's like, I don't know if it's just the bubbles or if it's just the what do they call it? The mother in it.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, it's like the like prebiotic. I don't want to say this wrong. Probiotics
I don't know.
in the shit that like grows within kombucha to
The
make it
booch.
kombucha.
That's the booch.
Is that what that is?
Well, it's either that or it's the cum, and I'd rather it be
Ew.
the booch.
Ew. Yeah, no. Well, like in raw apple cider vinegar, they call it the mother. And it's like, shake it around. Like, don't get it out of there because it's really good for you. And it's like the gross algae looking stuff at the bottom.
Okay, and they call that what?
The mother.
Who's they? They sound like they're in a cult.
Yeah, probably.
I don't like
It
them.
says it on, like, you know, Bragg's.
Is that
The
the
brand
apple
of the
cider?
apple cider. Yeah. It's like the
Okay.
most popular one. They probably make other stuff too,
Probably.
but they call it the mother.
That's
It's
what they
like
call
raw.
it on the labeling. They're like, it's full
Yeah.
of the mother's
And then
juices.
maybe because of that specific branding, or maybe not, probably some from somewhere else, like some raw vegan whatever blog. But now like that whole community uses it constantly. That's where I got it from. It's called the mother.
Whoa,
Oh, check yourself before you
gotta
wreck
get my
yourself.
foot out of there.
It's a trap.
I'm trying
Yeah. So anyways, I don't know. Maybe I just need to acclimate myself to kombucha again because it's hurting now.
Yeah, I know anytime my tummy hurts, I take some fiber and then I wait to poo. That's kind of that's my technique. For anybody that has an upset tummy.
You know what? I was actually a little bit, this may be TMI for the podcast, but I was a little backed up today and I was all worried about it. But then I got to work and we were all good. Very rare for me to do that there, but
Yeah, that's odd.
because it's not a very comfortable place. You're just surrounded by women who probably hold it in and, you know, let it come out as drama later on.
That's how women operate.
Yeah. Especially at my current workplace, you know?
You should take them some Metamucil.
And just set it on the desk.
No,
like
you'll have to sprinkle it in all of their waters. Just start with
possible.
a slow dose.
No, we have like a desk in the back where like sharing things go. Like one of the higher ups came in and like was doing a little figure eight meet and greet, they call it, where you walk around in a figure eight to all the desks and you chat with everybody. And he had brought donuts and you just put it on the back sharing table and it's like, there's donuts on the sharing like go get it. And I'll just put some Metamucil back there.
Yeah, you should. That, like, some Fiber One bars, some Metamucil.
They used to have Fiber One bars back there.
So yeah, those
did.
bitches need it.
Yeah, for real.
Maybe some enemas.
And electrolytes.
You
There's
could leave
almost
some
always-
enemas. You leave some enemas and some fucking
That's
Metamucil.
disgusting. Yeah, there's almost always electrolytes and like some sort of granola bar back there because we're all like chronically dehydrated and we don't eat because you just don't pay attention really to the time. Most of the time you're just like constantly doing shit. There's no stopping unless you're like, oh my God, I'm going to piss myself. And then you're like, personal, I need to go to the washroom. And then you're gone for 3 minutes. You come back and you're like, there's no stopping.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
all
you
just
have to be
forget.
like super disciplined.
until a manager messages us and says, hey, can you please go grab Something from the snack table.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you okay? Hey, I see that you didn't take a personal literally all day other than your break. Do you need some electrolytes? Do you need anything? How can I assist?
Even just that, even just the HR department giving people a time slot called personal, it's just so funny. Like I couldn't even imagine in like
yeah.
construction being like, yo, I actually need to take a personal like 5 minutes. They'd be like, yeah, no worries, start your truck and just head home, man. Like fucking take all the personal time you want. Like I
What do
couldn't
you
even
mean?
imagine that.
What do you mean?
Just saying that, like just saying that sounds funny. I mean, like you could be like, yo, I gotta take a phone call. Like I'll be back in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But like if I was like, yo, actually this is part of my personal time. I've blocked
Well,
this off.
no. So we don't have a specific amount of personal time that you can take during the day. Like we don't have a max or like a minimum.
No, I mean
But
it
we
just
have to
sounds
log
like
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds gay as fuck. I understand. But we have to log it as that because in the software that we use, if we don't take ourselves off of A, or what we call as available, then we'll be routed shit. And then if you don't take the stuff that's routed, then it ruins your KPIs and yada yada. So you have to log it as personal and you have to communicate it because there's like 600 of us working at one time. I feel like, yeah, for like smaller shit, it's like, why are you telling me that you need to take a personal and go to the washroom? Yeah, that sounds stupid as hell. But for the larger corporations, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah. Well, welcome to the Sleepy Time podcast. It is just about 8 o'clock here, which is pretty much my bedtime. But we were going to just record a little something. I don't know if you thought about, because we talked about recording this yesterday. I don't know if you thought about any topics or anything that you have in mind specifically that you want to discuss.
I don't really have anything specific. I did start to think about like maybe what I wanted to share a little bit like earlier, and then also yesterday when we were chatting with Miles and Mel and like we started to get into like
We're
crazy
going to keep
stories.
that under wraps. Okay.
We started talking about crazy stories and stuff. I was like, I don't know, like this is interesting, and I feel like maybe that's something that I can share.
Yeah, for sure.
As like learning for the audience, because don't do anything I did
Yeah, well,
in
you can do some of
between
this
the
stuff,
years
but-
of 2012 and 18 at least.
Yeah. Yeah, we can try and share some stories or lessons, or
Yeah.
as long as it's like uplifting and
Well, not everything is going to feel uplifting while you're explaining or like being vulnerable about your
no.
story.
no,
but
no,
just
no,
like
yeah.
coming out of it is uplifting alone. Like,
Yeah. And in regards to keeping things under wraps, we got some a cool little project coming with Miles and Mel as well. But again, like I said, it will be kept under wraps. You guys will be on a need to know basis,
Yeah.
and by that I mean when you need to know, you will.
yeah.
But yeah, we can talk about anything you want. I'm kind of I'm down for anything tonight.
I need you to be the podcast person. You know, when you have other guests on, it's different because I'm your girlfriend. So it's like, I don't know, you're not like leading me necessarily right now, but just do that. Like, you know, when you have a
That's
guest
kind of what I'm
on.
doing.
Yeah, I'm not going to come up with my own questions to ask. You know, it's so awkward for me to just be like, let me just talk about myself now.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's that I'm just asking like what you might want to discuss. You kind of alluded to some, I don't know, stories or lessons or things that you were thinking about sharing. I'm trying to pry that out of you.
Ask me questions.
Well, I don't know. Okay, here's your first question.
Okay.
What were you planning on sharing? You said you had something that you were planning on sharing.
I don't know exactly. I just was like thinking about my past. I don't know. I just don't know where to start. Like, how do I start that? It'd be cool if you asked me a question about it.
Where does it start? Where did it all start?
Where did it all start?
Where did it all start?
96.
This
There's a
might have to be a
randomness.
two-parter here, but we'll.
Oh, okay. Why?
I don't know. It depends on how long it takes to get into this.
Yeah. Hopefully you can edit some of that out. But yeah, if you ask me a question like
Where did it all start?
where did what all start?
What did you plan on sharing today?
I don't know. I just was thinking that maybe I could chat a little bit about like something that I'm a little bit passionate about, which is like women who have been through shitty situations.
Yeah, okay. So like what specifically about that intrigues you?
Well, I've been through multiple relationships that have included like coercive control or emotional abuse.
What's
But
coercive control?
it's when it can include things like finances, food, time, like things like that. But and I'll probably butcher this, so I almost kind of want to pull up the exact definition. But
You don't need to.
but
It's all good.
I want to because it's important. But basically, coercive control is when somebody is manipulating you, gaslighting you, controlling you in ways, making you feel unsafe. And so, like for example, if we combine our finances or something like that, and you slowly manipulate me in like with a negative connotation behind everything, like you manipulate me into signing over a lot of my finances to you or something like that, and then you end up changing things so that only you have control over finances, and then you start limiting my power with money even though it is my money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a part of coercive control.
And you hear about that and I don't think there's a right answer to this, but I just like it's interesting. I'm curious. I guess we've never really had this discussion, but like say like a man makes he's the breadwinner. He makes the majority of the money, right? And then like maybe the woman has like in the relationship has like a smaller income. Maybe it's like a percentage of, like she makes a fraction of what he makes kind of thing.
Common, yeah.
And say they have like it's like put into a certain bank account or whatever, and it's interesting to see like where and how does the money get controlled, because it's like it's obviously our money, but it's like how do you think the appropriate way to handle that is in regards to like who gets to like where do the compromises have to happen between that? Like who gets to make the quote unquote responsible decisions there?
Yeah, that's a good question. First, I'll say that obviously coercive control is a massive blanket statement. What I said was more on the end of not physical abuse, but coercive control is an act or a pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation, and intimidation, or other abuse tactics that are used to harm, punish, or frighten their victim. So just full blanket statement. But yeah, I was more talking about emotional control for majority of relationships, and then my most recent ex was like physically abusive. But to answer your question, when it comes to like finances specifically, obviously if somebody is going to be manipulative and use coercive control tactics, you're not going to be having healthy communication around finances, right? Like there's going to be a lot of manipulation behind that. So obviously if you're in a healthy relationship and you decide to start combining things, all of the red flags will start popping up when there's like no communication. Things start changing and you're like, whoa, like why do I not have access to this account anymore? Like why are suddenly my cards not working? And then all of a sudden you find out like your partner has all the power. Like obviously those are the red flags. Whereas if you guys communicate, like if we communicated and we decided we're going to have our separate personal accounts in which we funnel money into, and then we have our combined account that majority of our paycheck goes into, most likely on a percentage basis of our income, and that goes towards bills, food, etc., household related shit that's shared expenses, and we've communicated that beforehand, and then we action that, and like we both have access to those accounts. If something changes, like our income suddenly changes, or an emergency happens, like something with your truck or whatever, and like we need to use funds from there, if it's all communicated, it's like all relative, like that all makes sense, you know what I mean? The red flags only happen when there's like no more communication and shit gets changed, and then one person has like no more financial power or say, and it's like, oh shit, like something's going wrong here and now I don't have control over my money.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just kind of like weird because it's like a weird gray area. Like a punch, like it's like black or white. Like it's like, yeah, you can't punch your partner. You can't do that.
Probably don't do that.
Yeah, probably don't do that. Like physical, like threats and like intimidation are so obvious. Like it's like you could see how it easily translates into abuse. Like it's like, yeah, like how did you get her to start doing what you wanted? Oh, I just hit her. Like it's like, okay, that's probably not the best relationship. But then with like so with like anything physical like that or emotional, like we all know, like with gaslighting or just verbal abuse of like putting each other down all the time, or there's tons of different things. But with finances, it's such a weird gray area because it's like there's so many things that can be seen as, you hear about all those like court cases where people get like divorced, and then like this person, I'm not saying it's always a woman, but it normally is a woman, and it's like she like maybe is married to this man for like 15, 20 years, never made a buck in her life, never worked a day in her
Trophy
life,
wife,
and then like gets divorced, and then the guy's got to pay her for like
a divorce
this is like the what do they call it, like the lifestyle adjustment that I've made, so now this is my lifestyle, so now you have to pay so that I can keep this lifestyle type of thing. And so there's like that weird side of it, but then the other weird side of it is like you get like these like guys who have those types of wives, and they're like, if you don't do what I say, then you get cut off, like you're not getting any money. And it's like, well, that's
a transaction.
And it's like, obviously, like both can be extreme. Like I think that both are the outlier, but there's a lot of gray area in between of like kind of going back and forth between those things. But I feel like maybe, I think that it's less of money being the issue now that I'm saying it out loud, and I'm kind of understanding. Like, it's probably other things that are the issues, like non-shared values or non-shared lifestyle type, like behavioral things. Like, So I guess maybe that kind of answers my own thought process.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're on. I don't know. Yeah, I think you're right about the extremes of relationships, and like a lot of the time when there are the like male breadwinner, female homemaker situations, or even just something.
But
No, well, I don't know about that. I feel like even if you're just talking about like even a healthy like traditional dynamic where the woman's the homemaker and the man is the breadwinner, even if you don't have kids involved yet, like I feel like most of the time that dynamic is chosen and you have shared values, and there's an understanding that the man is providing for you, obviously because he loves you and he wants to build a family with you, yada, 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 but also on the basis that you're holding up your end of the bargain and you are taking on those homemaker duties, because it's not fair. I mean, it can be completely transactional, and you can go to the extreme of like the man being the breadwinner of like coming in with a ton of money and just like buying this bitch gifts and like whatever else, and she's not doing shit for him other than like, giving him ass. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like there's that extreme, and I'm sure that exists, but like that dynamic is never healthy.
Yeah.
And they're just using each other, clearly.
Yeah.
It's solely transactional. But like back to what I was saying about a healthy traditional relationship, that's like totally fine in my eyes to like have that, or like have expectations of your partner, especially if you have those specific roles in the relationship. It just does get like to become a gray area, or it gets muddy when you're trying to find the dynamic, especially in this economy when like so many of us, especially our age, are like, well, like you both have to work a job, otherwise you can't like afford things. Or, you know, like one person, especially the female, might be like, I really like feel called to be the homemaker, but I'm stressed as fuck about all this stuff, or like whatever it is, and like I have to make money to contribute, otherwise like my partner has to do it all on their own, and like that's not fair to them. But also I like feel stressed, and like I wish that I had all the time and like finances to do all of these things that I want. You know what I mean? Like it gets muddy and shit when you're trying to find the dynamic of like finances when, you know, you both need to be working and you both need to be contributing.
Yeah. I think that yeah, it's weird. I think that the idea of like traditional gender roles is like so it's I think it's misunderstood on both sides of it, because like one side is like there should be absolutely no gender roles, and then the other side is like we need to strictly stick to these gender roles. And I had a good chat with Marcus Torgerson recently. He and I were talking similar, like kind of a similar topic, but we were talking, he said something along the lines of like this, like if you were to line up like a guy who can go out into the forest and like find the right mushrooms to eat and find the right berries to eat and find a clean source of drinking water and can start a fire and knows how to make a clothing out of tree bark. And then you have like another guy who's like UFC level fighter and he can beat up anybody and protect himself and protect the whole tribe type of thing. And then you have a third guy who can like build structures and make like fences and borders and homes and mechanically fix, like kind of more mechanically inclined guy.
Well, wilderness guy might be that guy. I feel like would
Assume that they don't.
'Kay.
Let's play along with this thought exercise.
All right,
Like there's
I'm
three
trying.
different guys. They all have three different
Different
skill sets. And then so it's like who's the most manly? Right? Like it's obvious.
Oh, what a weird question.
Well, it's like that's, you know, kind of the way we measure like, oh, you to be a man, you need to be able to protect, you need to be able to provide, you need to be able to do X, Y, and Z. But then like God didn't make any of us to be able to like fulfill every single one of those things. Like to be a good person, a human being, is to just do like your skill set to the very best of your ability and contribute as much as you possibly can, be fruitful and multiply. And it kind of like I've really been thinking in the last couple of days since I spoke with him about that, and it's kind of like you know, we have these like two ideas, like I said earlier, like conflicting, contrasting ideas of like there should be no gender roles, or the other side says like we need to strictly stick to these gender roles. But like the question would be is like who's the dictator of like what makes what a gender role? Like is having an honest conversation a female gender role? Like is that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is like picking your child up when they've scraped their knee, is that like a male gender role or a female gender role?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. I think that you could probably determine different biological factors that probably could be incorporated into certain gender roles and be like more likely. Like I know that you've brought this up before in the past. It might have even been on one of your past like podcasts, maybe your guest or you said it, but the use of the whole plane pilot thing, where it's like, would you rather choose a male or a female pilot? And it's like, oh, I would choose a male any day because the female is more emotional and would make bad choices. And like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, if the plane was going down, would you rather have a male in the cockpit or a female? And it's like the female would be more emotional. Yeah, I don't know. So there's just like things like that I think people are like, you know, stepping on the territory of like biologically what do female brains move towards and what do male brains move towards. And a lot of the times we hear male brains talked about in straight lines or squares or,
Right,
right.
right.
A to B, whereas female brains are like spaghetti brains. We don't really go to A to B. We go like
You're always thinking
A,
about pasta
A,
and
D,
shit.
B, Z, D.
Carbs and
Yeah, I don't
pasta.
know, man.
Fucking sauce and
And
shit.
naps and chocolate. Yeah, so I feel like that does have to do with the way that our brains work. I do think that there is something to that, the difference between male and female. And I think that we can hold on to that and realize that that's a positive thing because men and women can come together and like make each other better in that way. But I also think that, yeah, it's like a slippery slope. Like you can't really continue to categorize people. And I feel like this is the other extreme as well, is like they want to hold on to labels and categorizations so fucking badly. It's like label me as this and label me as that. I'm sure you know what I'm referencing.
No, not really.
Like LGBTQ.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So like label me as and then you start to realize that it's a trap within itself because it's like if you dress up as a woman, now you're kind of more of a woman, but actually gender roles don't exist. And so are you saying that like to be a woman, you have to be all these things and look feminine and act feminine? Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, are you acting more feminine so that you can be a woman, or do these traits actually even matter? And I just feel like it's a slippery fucking slope. And a lot of it can like easily just be like, you're a person, you were born with this genitalia, that makes you female or that makes you male kind of a deal. And then from there, you're just a fucking individual and you're a person like figuring life out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like, I'm not going to judge a person based on, I'm going to try not to judge a person based on how they look. I'm probably going to judge a person based on how they communicate with me, how they treat me. You know what I mean? Like if a person's screaming down the street, like first I'm going to be like, they're a crazy person because they're screaming down the street. And then if they just so happen to be dressed in like a wig and like heels, but look like a bodybuilder, I'm going to be like, there's something up there as well. Like the first thing that comes out of my mouth is going to be like, oh, that fucking, whatever name call. Like that's so dumb.
I might do that, but I try my best not to.
Yeah, you catch yourself. And the same thing has happened. I've watched a lot of those like college campus style like talks or whatever that a lot of more right leaning
like
or
the
conservatives.
Change My Mind, Steven Crowder stuff.
Maybe not the Change My Mind, Steve Crowder, but more like Candace Owens type stuff.
Okay.
Where like these people will come and ask her questions during like the question period and ask like, you're so judgmental, like what do you think of me? And these people are like, I don't think anything of you other than like if you were disrespectful or respectful. Like if you're going to come and ask like a valid question here, I'm going to just think that you're a respectful person. And like I can see the color of your skin, but I'm not going to judge you based on the color of your skin. And they'll be like, oh, I'm actually a black lesbian. And so like this is what you should think of me. And they're like, I don't care that you're that.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. I always get like, and maybe this is because I'm like a cis white male transphobe. I don't know what fucking labels people want to throw at me, but I find it irritating sometimes when you'll see in like the world of podcasts of self-development and mental health and everything like that, they'll have like a different fucking guru for every single different like little demographic, like
a leader.
No, but I mean like they divide it into like racial things or religious things or like gender things, like we need to make all like lesbian, Asian, like South Pacific Islander with depression and PTSD between the ages of 47 and 32 that live in a certain area, like I'm that person. Like, do you know what I mean? Like when people have like their weird little like divisions of like I'm that mental health guru. Like I can heal any of those people. Like I can, that's my niche market. And it's like, I really get irritated with that because I think that human beings, like our trauma transpires or
I was gonna say
transcends.
you're really stuck on that first part of the word.
That specialty word. No, transcends.
Damn.
It transcends like mental suffering and the traumas that human beings experience transcend all things like race, religion, creed, gender, etc. And the lessons to help us manage getting through those things, I think, are universal as well. Like, there's a reason why the Bible or Marcus Aurelius' meditations or any of these ancient philosophies like Taoism, Buddhism, anything, those are the ones that I've studied the most, but like anything else, like they're kind of universal laws of like, yeah, this is the mental suffering you'll probably encounter, and this is how you can reframe your mind to overcome it. And it's kind of universal. Like, it doesn't really apply to, oh, but I had this one experience because I have this and this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, we already have like a lot of philosophies from around the world that have kind of understood that the human experience is united and we get through it united. And so, like, when I see these types of like subgenres of like fucking, I like to help a survivor that had a car accident when they were 6 years old 12 years later. Like, they have like these weird niches of who they help, and it's like all you're really doing, like, I get like the idea of like, oh, but I want to make them feel connected. And I get that. I get like, oh, we want to make a community of shared
Like-minded people.
experiences
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
blah 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 blah. But it's like really all you're doing is connecting them to an isolated group. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, that's cool if you want to make an echo chamber where someone can just like be a victim all the time. But like realistically, when people divide themselves into those categories of like, oh, I have to have my one group, it's like, okay, cool, go to church, like do whatever you need to do, like meet with the people that are like minded. But it's like if you're really, really suffering mentally, like you want to connect with as many people as you possibly can and as many diverse ideas as you possibly can, because if you're suffering, and I've said this a million times, it's like if you're suffering, you probably don't know how to stop your own suffering. Otherwise, you would. You know, like it's like realistically, you probably need
Absolutely.
someone to come in and be like, "Yo, are you on the right track?" And if you are, you're like, "Yeah," and then they're like, "Okay, cool." But if you're like, "Hey, are you on the right track?" and you're like, "No, I'm not on the right track," they're not gonna be like, "Oh, what do you think you should do?" Because it's like whatever you think you should do has
Well,
landed you where you are.
yeah. Yeah, you're right, but not necessarily. So many counselors use the Socratic method.
Yeah, but I also think counseling industry is a little bit
Yeah,
fucky.
yeah, sometimes for sure. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you're right. I don't know, but and then I agree with what you said about, you're trying to find community and like-mindedness and all of that as well. Because like personally, when I was down in the shit and like trying to find my way out of the abusive relationships and trying to find myself again, oh my God, like I think the first thing I did was throw myself into work, A, because I couldn't get time off of work, even with a black eye, but B, because it could just suppress everything.
Mm-hmm.
I could just be like, oh, I'm hiding, like, I can just, and then I'll take on 2 more jobs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have my full time and then I'll just grab a weekend and then I'll nanny in the mornings
Mm-hmm.
until I have to go to work. Like, I don't know. I just took on as many things as I could so I didn't even have to think about it.
Yeah, like escapism.
Except for the times when my ex would try to come into the business that I worked at. I didn't have to think about it until then.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? So it was still unhealthy, like horrible coping mechanism. Just, yeah. But when I finally was given the resources, so like not only was I like not able to cope myself and figure that out, and I was like smoking a ton of weed, like there's so many things I was doing to suppress all of that. But as finally when like my mom reached out and was like, hey, like, do you want to go see this counselor, and hey, like, do you want to come to meetings and like all of these things, I finally, figured it out eventually through the pathway of being like, this is the fucked up thing that I'm dealing with. It's pretty specific. I mean, quite broad, but like pretty specific. And I need help with this specific thing. And I'm going to find a specific person that deals with those things often, like an expert in that field, to help me with that specific thing. So I get it. For example, if you are like a young person and you feel like you fit into a category based on specific trauma, like you were abused growing up, like in a specific age group or whatever, and you find a therapist that's like, I specialize in these specific things, it's like, yeah, you're probably gonna move closer to that, unless you're like really in a fucked up place and like you have really destructive mechanisms. Then you're gonna find a group of people who are in the same boat as you, who just fuck each other up more. Because I've also found that, like, for example, a lot of victims groups for women who have been in horribly abusive situations, oh my God, all of those groups are the same.
Yeah,
They're just, this
no
is the
doubt.
horrible thing that happened to me. It'll never get better. All men are pieces of shit.
Right.
And they just feed each other into a horrible victim spiral, and you'll always be a victim and you'll always be alone. And then every now and then there's a little positive. It's Thanksgiving, and like I'm grateful I get to spend time with my family, and there's some little great gratitude and little niceties, and then on to the fucking next news story of like a man who stabbed his wife and a pregnant wife and killed their unborn baby. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a constant repetitive cycle of negativity. Also because it's so prevalent, like abuse towards women is so prevalent. So I guess it's hard when you've been a part of that and you see all the horrific shit. It's hard to step out of that, but at some point you do have to try to take yourself out of that by using the necessary pathways.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, maybe it depends on the situation as well, because if you kind of just have like an open forum type thing, like it's basically like a battered woman's Reddit, like it's kind of like, that's not really like
WhatsApp group, but yeah.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like the inmates are running the prison at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I get
That's
if you...
a great way to explain it.
Like I get if you... It's a famous quote, like a famous saying.
I've
like
not heard that before.
Okay.
But I mean, that's just a great way to put it, because you're literally creating your own prison as well.
Yeah, I think the actual saying is the patients are running the asylum.
Okay.
But I think it's the same idea. Is like it's there's no authority figure running it. Like it's like the people that are supposed to be controlled by the system are then making the rules and running the system. And it's like, is this really benefiting anyone other than like short-term you?
Right.
Like it's like...
And then everybody in those groups most of the time feels completely drained and horrible still. But they're like, I'm contributing to something good and I'm helping other women with my story. And it's like, are you though?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I find with those types of things, like I said, like I didn't say it yet, but I thought it. So
you said it to yourself in your mind, so it counts.
But my experience with that as well is like through running like mental health group chats and stuff like that. Like it's very it's kind of similar in that you'll see people share stories or experiences,
nice,
that they maybe an event that they suffered through or a trauma that they had or whatever, right? And then people really don't know how to react sometimes. And so like the default response is like, wow, you're so brave, or like, hey, I'm with you, or like,
well,
hey,
I mean, those aren't...
Well, let me finish. And they'll be like, wow, like that's so cool of you or so good of you. And like they'll be like, hey, like it's all good. Like it's kind of like an overwhelming love bomb, because it's like kind of most people don't have the gumption about them to kind of just say like, hey, like you're being a bit of a victim right now. Some people are like, oh, what if I'm not, what's the word they use all the time? Validating their experience, right. Or like maybe like someone's complaining about something and you're like, hey bro, that's really not that big of a deal.
Like they're worried about just destroying the fragility of the person.
Yeah, yeah. So to avoid that, like the overwhelming kind of like default response for people that aren't really that connected with each other is just to like love bomb the shit out of them and be like, "Wow, you're so brave, you're a warrior, you're such a survivor."
Oh yeah, that happens
And
all day,
because
every
of
day in those
that,
groups.
like a lot of the time these people are so isolated and they're so like they've isolated themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and they've really just kind of set themselves up for failure by like becoming sloths, and they don't really do anything because they just wallow around. And so like the only positive affirmation they get is when they complain and then someone says they're brave for doing it. And it's like kind of like an endless loop of like, oh, but if you don't give me the response that I want and validate everything that I've went through and gone through and want to talk about at this very moment and say that I'm a brave warrior for doing it, then you're actually the bad guy. And it just like creates like this weird environment where it's like, I'm going to set the rules for how everyone has to interact with me because I went through something hard.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
It's just such a bother.
Yeah, I mean, I see it in the groups all the time. The exact response that you said. You're so brave. Wow, you went through so much. Which, I mean, yeah, especially when you have a woman who's in there explaining how her husband literally beat her to within like an inch of her life while her fucking stepmother and stepsisters and what, or not, mother-in-law and sisters-in-law are like all watching. You know what I mean? Like that's extremely traumatizing. So absolutely, if you're going to tell that story, all of the women who have either been through similar to higher or lesser degree, they're going to be like, holy shit, like you've been through a lot. Like you should be so proud of yourself for at least even like getting out of it. So like absolutely first step, sometimes absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
But then second step, how are you now? Like, can you get out of that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not saying by any means like talking about your issues is not supposed to be like what you're doing. Like that's not what I'm trying to say is to be like, yeah,
No, it's
you definitely need to share these things and talk about these things to actually be able to probably even dive deep into them by yourself and discover like what events led to this, how can I learn from this?
absolutely, or with an expert.
Or maybe like there's nothing that could have prevented it and it's just like how do I forgive this person so I can move on with my
Yeah.
life? How do I forgive myself because of all the
Yes.
guilt? And how do I
true.
understand that this isn't like a going to be a constant? It's not like how every relationship from here on out is going to be. If I can learn,
For some people, it is, but
well, that's what I said. If I can
yeah,
learn these things,
Yes.
like, but I just feel like if you get like yeah, I don't know. I think that I kind of said it best earlier. Like if you get like all the prisons and or if you get all the inmates in the prison and they start making their own kind of rules and to talk about how each thing is going to be run and like it's kind of like I guess what I'm trying to say is you got to pick your audience like really wisely because it's so easy to get stuck in those echo chambers and like energy vacuums where it's just like also a weird false sense of dopamine as well because like realistically if you've gone through something that horrific like those I'm not trying to downplay what anyone goes through either but it's like if you've gone through something that horrific maybe it does bring you value to like share that with 15 other people that have gone through something similar and then you just share it and they tell you you're brave and maybe that does improve your life but from an outside perspective I personally don't think that that's what's going to improve your life and like little short-term bursts of dopamine might get you through that day but it's really not going to get you in a better position in life feeling better actually being able to like cope and heal and live a regular life again like it's like probably not the best long-term solution so that like it's kind of like I guess maybe I'm more of an advocate for therapy and counseling than I believe I am because it's like it's probably better than just like jumping into one of these echo chambers.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree with you. I also think that like being vulnerable is the first step to actually getting like making your life better. So if that is the case, then you are becoming more vulnerable with the people around you, especially if it is people who have been through the same things that you have been through. It's going to make you feel less alone and more empowered to take the next step that hopefully the people around you have then already taken. Like a lot of these women who are in these groups found each other through another program, which is an amazing thing. Like they usually found each other through um, like either a coercive control course or like a counselor that's an expert in abuse, like something like that. They usually found it in some sort of group scenario. They found each other through that, and then they've created the group based on that. So they've already been through the process of like trying to find something to get out of the shit. So, I mean, I feel like that's a great start. Whereas like a lot of other groups, like even the group that you had started, like a lot of that wasn't based on, hey, like we found each other because like, you know, we were enrolled in this course where we were already working on shit. It was like for people who were like fucked up, you know, and they were like trying to find community. And in that community, we were all there for each other to like lift each other up. And there were always a few people who were just like, I don't want to be lifted up right now. And for even in the groups that I'm in, like sometimes the people are just like, they don't fucking want help. Like they're literally just in those groups to be victims and continue to be victims. And guess what? They will continue to get into those shitty relationships. They'll continue to like not have a good life. They'll continue to like feel sorry for themselves and pity themselves and continue to stay in the same cycle like over and over and over again. And both of us have experienced that in different ways in our lives and in our relationship. And it'll just continue. Like if you don't want to do the work, then fucking nothing's going to change. That's the whole next step.
So you're telling me that my life won't improve if I just use all of the bad things that have happened to me as justification for poor behavior?
Absolutely.
I thought that if I just do whatever I want and act like an asshole, then I could just like remind everybody about tough things that I've had to go through, and then it's okay and I'm a hero. I'm brave.
Yeah, and you know what? I think this is important for us to talk about this as well, is that we both even do this to this day in our relationship where we get to this point where we're feeling down in the dumps, like we're feeling real fucked up about something. Everything's getting to us, we're overwhelmed, and like for me, I'll get depressed and like want to sleep all day, and you'll like I don't know, we react differently to each other when we do this shit. But like we have fucked up behavioral patterns. And then we get into a little pity spiral about it, and we pity ourselves, and then we do the thing. We do I'm a victim, like my life is horrible. Here are all the circumstances that made me the way I am right now, and I'm using that as a reason to stay miserable. And you need to lift me up out of this, and you need to be a support for me out of this. And that's the only way I'm going to get out of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, like you have to do something for yourself though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in those moments when that's happening, and then your partner is just sitting there like fucking flabbergasted because they're like, I literally cannot help you up right now. Like, even if I tried to help you up or said anything, even if I came to you and gave you a hug, like that might make you feel better a little bit, but like you have to get yourself out of the dumps. And 100%, I still think your partner needs to be there for you and support you through that. But no way in hell should anyone believe that their partner is going to be their fucking savior. No one is coming to save you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a beautiful way to wrap this up. I have to pee. So,
Okay.
we can either do a little outro or I can go pee and then we can do an outro. But I think that...
No, let's do an outro. And then if we can do a part 2, because, yeah, I'd like to talk more about the whole, you know...
The whole what?
Abuse thing. I feel like there's more people out there that can connect to this because it's so common, and even... like manipulation and gaslighting all the way up to physical abuse. I think that there's so many people who are like, whoa, that's happened in my relationship. Maybe I should pay attention to that. So I think it'd be cool to have a part 2.
Yeah. Well, luckily we have a lot of time together in our lives to do as many podcast
It doesn't
episodes
seem like that,
as
but
we
yeah, let's
want.
do an outro.
All right. Well, that's the outro. Thanks for joining us for the show. I'll check you guys on Monday. Anything else you want to say? Closing thoughts?
Bye.
Okay, bye. Go and pee now. Good night. Love you all. Bye.